Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network, and of course, throughout the entire month of December and January, we're breaking down all the installments of the Royal Rumble from 1987 to 2015. Today, we're talking about the inaugural installment, Royal Rumble 1988. Kicking off with Ricky Steamboat versus Rick Rude in a match that you would think would be better than it actually was, considering the workers involved. Rick Rude, Ricky Steamboat. Rick Rude was able to get a competent match out of the Warrior. Not that year, maybe that same year at WrestleMania or the following year, but those two had a pretty good match at WrestleMania, and he was a very good worker, and Ricky Steamboat speaks for himself, but the match really wasn't what it could have been. A lot of long rest holds for 16 minutes, a lot of it, or very few of it, was exciting in-ring action. It was mostly just rest holds throughout most of them, making for a very boring bout. In the end, it was Ricky Steamboat winning via disqualification after Rick Rude thought he won the match, which was fine. It really wasn't the finish that was bothersome. It was just more so the match itself that kind of fell short of expectations. So not exactly really the match that should have kicked off the show. You would think they would deliver a better match than they did, but they didn't. But kind of an underwhelming match, and hopefully they would have better rematches later down the line. So after that, a 2 out of 3 count falls match for the WWF Women's Tag Team titles. The Jumping Up Bomb Angels contending for the gold against the Glamour Girls. In a very good match, actually 10 times better than the previous match between Steamboat and Rick Rude. I talked about it in the Survivor Series 87 review, but the Jumping Bomb Angels were awesome in the ring, very, very fun to watch, and a team that I feel like doesn't really get all that much recognition. Before I started watching the 87 and 88 pay-per-views, I never really knew much about them at all, other than what I've heard, from various people and whatnot, but, WWE never brings them up. No light is ever shed on them in articles or in videos or whatever, but they're a great team, great in-ring athletes, and they never really get the attention they deserve, in my personal opinion, but they had a great match here, beat the Glamour Girls for the tag team titles. I think it was... they picked up the first fall, the Glamour Girls picked up the second fall, and they picked up the third and deciding fall to win the title. So a very, very fun match, and probably the best match of the entire show. There's only 4 matches in one segment, which I'll talk about in one second, but a very, very good match, a new tag team champion's crowned, and it's a shame. People have asked me before whether women's tag team titles could work in today's WWE, and I feel like it's a cool thing in theory. I know TNA had them for a while, for a very short period of time, or at least that's how long they were relevant for, but just, even though we have the talent in the division today, I just feel like it wouldn't be something that would really be used to its full potential, if only because the talent is great, the talent is there, I just don't have enough faith in the company to use the titles properly. I know it was something that was rumored a couple years ago when we had the Bella Twins, the Chick Busters, and a few other teams, a few other tandems on Raw and SmackDown too, but now, in the Divas of Doom when we had Beth and Natalya as a tandem. But other than that, you would really get the same matches every single week. It would be exactly what it was when we had I guess you could still call the Divas Revolution still going on. I really have no idea. But during when it was getting shoved down our throats, we had Team PCB versus Team Bella every single week, or Team Bella versus Team Bad. It would be really no different. We would have to have interchangeable teams, a lot more talent than we do right now. We don't have a very large talent pool, and we did... maybe if you had women's tag team titles and you had them defended on both brands, maybe 10 or, 5 or 10 years ago when we still had Raw and SmackDown as separate shows. But nowadays, with the small talent pool that we have and so many women out and whatever, I just don't think it would work. But anyway, a very fun match, though, between the Jumping Bomb Angels and the Glamour Girls. After that, we had a segment between Hulk Hogan, and Andre the Giant signing the contract for their WWF Championship rematch on the February 5th edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, I believe it was, or the Main Event, or forgot what the exact show was. But they were having a title rematch a couple weeks later after this show. In your typical contract signing, with Andre attacking Hogan to get heat on him, and Hogan would have an interview later on in the night, and so would Bobby Heenan and Andre, just hyping up the match. So a lot of great hype for the championship match throughout the show, and of course that was the infamous match where we had the Hebner twins serving as the referees, and the Evil Twin came in, and the whole non-finish that caused the title to be vacated, creating a championship tournament for WrestleMania, blah, 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 blah. But still... the segment was good. Like I said, it was kind of your typical contract signing, but the funny thing about it was that I believe this was one of the original contract signings. We had not had many of them up to this point, if any at all. None that really come to mind. So it was kind of like the first of its kind. We would get 1,000 repeats of it over the next 30 years, but still It was good for what it was, and if you kind of take it out of context and not think about all the other contract signings we've got in the last 3 decades, which have been done to death, and just remember that this was the first one, it kind of set the precedent for everything that was to follow. It was good, and like I said, they were effective. It was successful in hyping up the title rematch for a few weeks later in what really was a huge deal, so they really needed to get as much heat on that match as possible, considering what it would imply for the WrestleMania 4 tournament. So after that, we had our first ever Royal Rumble match with only 20 men, the first and only Rumble match to feature 20 men. I believe every other one after that would feature 30 men. But it was fun. I mean, later on we would get Rumble matches that would feature more stories and kind of different directions that the wrestlers could go in setting the stage for WrestleMania. Not really too much of that going on here. I mean, we would have WrestleMania 4, with WrestleMania 4 being, like I said earlier, the entire show is mostly devoted to the WWF title tournament. So that being said, there wasn't really a need for many stories to develop in this match, and that's not really what this match was meant for anyway. It wasn't even the main event. It was the second to last match on the show. It was fun for what it was, and it really helps when you don't have a person that the internet hates going over. I joke, but it wasn't like Batista or Roman Reigns went over. We had Jim Duggan going over as the first inaugural Royal Rumble winner. So a fun match, like I said, no real stories told, just the in-ring action was cool. And, I mean, they don't really have the nameplates, so you can't really tell who's who, but the commentators point them out, and if you pay attention to the commentary, it makes a lot more sense. And like I said, it really wouldn't become like, oh, the winner of this match goes on to main event WrestleMania. That wouldn't come in until, I believe, 93 when Yokozuna won it. So it really wasn't that big of a deal until then. But still, a fun match and a great way of kicking off a long-standing tradition in WWE. So we get to the main event, the Islanders taking on the Young Stallions, and just a standard 2 out of 3 falls match. No tag team titles on the line here. It's Haku and Tama against Paul Roma and Jim Powers. The funny thing is, I actually met Paul Roma only a couple weeks ago, so it's funny to see him in action here. He was injured during the course of this match. I don't think it was... Pretty sure it was Roma, not Powers, but during the first fall, they got injured, or one of them got injured. I'm pretty sure it was Roma. On the outside, they got counted out, giving the fall to the Islanders, and then the Islanders won the second fall, too. The match actually went shorter than any other match in the entire show, and it was the main event, so that was kind of weird. I don't know if I would have gone over, finished the show with this match. Probably just would have finished it with the Rumble. I mean, maybe the Young Stallions were supposed to win here, but because Paul Roma was legitimately injured, maybe they had to change the finish. I'm not exactly sure. But even if they weren't, I still probably wouldn't have put this match in the main event slot. I mean, it was okay. I thought it was better than Ricky Steamboat and Rick Rude. I thought it was a decent match, but it didn't really feel fitting of the main event slot after all the hype for the title match and the Rumble match, the first ever Rumble match in WWE history, and that awesome women's match, like I said, probably stole the show. So I don't know if I would exactly put that in the main event slot, so I probably would have just changed the match order on the show. I mean, it was, like I said, an okay match. The injury, if it was legitimate, probably hindered it, but an okay match to close out. A good show. I mean, I'd check it out if only because it's the first ever Royal Rumble in history. It clocks in at about 2 hours and 20 minutes as opposed to your traditional 3 hours. So it's a lot easier to go through. It's easier to digest. You can check it out on the network in its entirety. If there's any one match that I would recommend that you check out, I mean, I hate to say anything but the Rumble, but the women's tag team title match was really, really, really good. You had a great moment with the Jumping Bomb Angels winning the belt, so I'd probably say that one, but at the same time, check out the Rumble too, probably the shortest Rumble of all time at only 33 minutes and not an hour like usual. So I'd check out those two matches. The opener was disappointing, the main event was okay, and you also had the contract signing and all the hype for the WWF title match a couple weeks later on the main event, or Saturday night's main event, or whatever it was. It's still, like I said, a decent show, a good show that is worth watching, if only because of its historical significance in WWE history as the inaugural Royal Rumble pay-per-view event. So that is my review of Royal Rumble 1988. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I always appreciate it. I'll be back on Saturday with my full review of Royal Rumble 1989. But until then, in the meantime, in the between time, you guys can catch me on Twitter at WrestleRant, on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews, and also right here on the YouTube by subscribing, sharing, liking, and commenting on this video. As I mentioned, all support is greatly appreciated. Have a great rest of your week, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch you guys down the road.